Alright, so our origami bowls gave us a chance to figure out what kind of thing I could put underneath our clay to make it so it doesn't stick to the surface. This is a piece of parchment paper, which some people have. It's a kind of paper used for baking. Again, you can use other kinds of paper. It could just be regular paper, like out of your sketchbook kind of paper. It could also be newspaper, magazine, stuff that you get delivered, whatever. And it could be fabric, if you have fabric that doesn't stretch. Whatever it is you used, you can go ahead and use that again. And I'm going to need a piece of clay that's going to be this big. And so it's not huge, but I also know that from the origami bowls that some of you maybe had it where you rolled it out and it was too small and it was frustrating. So it's better to go a little bit too big. So I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to press it out. Again, I'll remind you that you're going to want to stand anytime that you want to get some force going down. So if I want to press it out, then using the force straight down from my shoulders rather than sitting down. Every once in a while I'm going to pick it up so it doesn't get stuck, and when it gets stuck it just doesn't move very much. So I can see where I'm at and I go, okay, so I definitely need to make it thinner, but I specifically want to make it go out to the corners. And so right away I'm going to start that. So I'm going to start in the middle, work out toward one corner, work out toward another corner, and then repeat. And see how I'm doing. So I'm not using the rolling guides yet because I can see that it's very thick and I don't have any problems there. But once I think I'm getting kind of close, I'm going to get those rolling guides involved. So I feel like I'm getting kind of close in some areas, and so at this point I want to get them involved. Alright, here we go. So now, double check again. Okay, it is better now. I'm making it toward the corners. I do still have a little bit missing there, but I'm hoping if I can push it out from the middle at this point that I will see those corners being taken care of. Now again, I'll remind you that if you're at the very edges and you're rolling back and forth, it tends to want to stick and grab onto the tool like that. And so if I try to go away from the middle, it won't keep doing that. So if I go back and forth in the middle, but when I get near the edges, I'm going to push away or pull from the middle. Now, I'm not going to need the end, so I'm just going to take that off right now. Really good advice for you is whenever you have scraps, rather than letting them sit out and sit out and sit out and get all dry, is to immediately bag them up. And if they already are kind of dry, add some water to them right away, whether you have a spray bottle or take it to the sink and just run some water on it, and then just put them together and then put them in your bag. So let me go ahead and start doing that right now. I like rolling out slabs, but I also want things to be faster. So if I can get the bottom area of my mug, that white area here in this case, if I can get that cut out in the first place, then I don't have to worry about rolling out another slab. So what I'm saying is, if I have this, it's possible that that area could be cut out of there. Now, a minute ago I cut a piece off there, which was not the best planning, so I might not be able to get a circle. We'll find out. If I take the can, in this case a spray can, it needs to be much more than that, and I found out, man. Okay, so I said you could use all sorts of things for texture. This is this dryer ball I have. Now, it's very hard to push against paper and have it be perfectly neat, so be careful about it, or lay your wooden guide here, and then you can push against it with ease. Look at that, that was perfect. Pretty cool. I'm ready to make this work now. And so I'm going to take this. And here's the thing, if I wrap this around the object that I was using as my guide, it will be a huge problem because it's going to get stuck on there and I'll never get it off. And so what I'm saying is, do not take whatever your cylinder is and just wrap it around. That is dangerous. You need to have something that wraps around it. Now, I could use the template That might work. Or I could take any other paper. I could take newspaper or anything. I just want to be able to wrap around it. It could be plastic wrap. Anything that's going to create a surface between these two surfaces. So if I try to do this, and I have this on there, as long as I can get it off, okay, that should be fine. Now, this is where if it's really tight, I got to make sure that it's going to be able to get off the end. And so that little rim at the bottom should not be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'm just going to use a little piece of tape to keep. Okay. Now, I want to get it down to the bottom here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around. Now, as I do this, be aware clay can be stretched out, which can be working to your advantage. And so notice what happened in doing this and measuring it exactly. I find out, wait a minute, it didn't quite work out. And so it's a little bit too short. And so I need to stretch it a little bit. And so if I kind of just take it and I'm just kind of pulling upward a little bit, giving it a little bit of stretch on this side. At the bottom, same thing. I'm going to take this and kind of pull it upward on this side. Just kind of stretching. I'm not trying to change the surface too much, but that little bit I saw it made a difference, and so I'm going to do it again. Kind of pulling upward, stretching just a little bit as I go, and then pulling upward and stretching as I go. So I'm not changing it too much with each one of those, but just enough that it's getting really close. So I can probably do one more. Okay, scoring time. And now slipping time.
Ooh, slippy, 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 gotta put the slip on the clay. Slippy time. Look at all that slip. Oh, slippy slip.
Very big caution, I need to say right now. You do not want to leave it in this case, spray paint can, and let it dry. Remember what happens to clay? It shrinks. Now just use your brain for a second. Think what's going to happen if this clay is shrinking and the can is still in it. If you are thinking to yourself, it's going to get stuck on there, then absolutely right. It will be stuck on there, and the only way you can get it off is by either somehow breaking the can inside and pulling it out, or breaking the clay off. And so do yourself a favor and have it around here, but then it's time to start getting it out. Now if your clay is very, very, very soft, you might want to wait a little bit till it's a little bit firmer, but I do want to be able to slide this out. So being that I use paper inside of it, it should come out quite easily. So there it is, it's coming out. And so now I have that paper in there, which I can pull out right now. And there it is. Now, it's still really easy to mess up, and I love how it's a perfect cylinder right now, so I'm going to let that be. And now it's time to make the bottom.
Squish, 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 squish.
And I'm going to stick it on here and then trim it off. That's one way to do it. So I'm going to take something in order to make a little mark, and it could be a pencil, or I'm just using the end of this paintbrush. I want to do something that's going to allow me to trace where that circle is. And then I want to score that very area so that I have great contact. Now, because I'm going to be trimming it off, it's okay if I go a little bit outside of that circle. I don't really want to have a ton inside that circle because then it'll be visible when I look down into the mug, and it'll be harder to smooth out later. So I could do that. Like I said, you can use some other different tools. If you want to use your pencil, if you want to use the tool that has the bobby pin on the end. Any way to put lines in your clay is scoring. So this would be fine too. However you want to do it so that it's all roughed up. Now, I want to pick which side is the bottom and the top. Now, if one of them is looking better for the top, let's say I want to use this as the top, then there's my bottom. I'm going to now double check it that I have that right. Yes, I do. Now some people will cut out the circle first and then stick it on. I like this method because that way if you had it off a little bit, I now know that I have perfect coverage all the way around, and now I just need to cut off what doesn't need to be there. And so when I take this off, it's too much, which is good. I can always take some off if it's too much. If it's too little, then that's not going to work. I'm going to have to redo it. So this looks good to use. Time to fix it up. But first, guess what I'm going to do with my clay. A little bit of water for me. A little bit on the dry side, not too bad, but I added a touch of water and into the bag it goes. So now it's time to touch this up. Now if there's really big problems, like it sticks off a lot, those are going to need to be cut off. And so again, you can try any of the tools you have there. I could try this card to be a little bit neater. Alright, so it's much better. It doesn't hang off a ton right now. And so now it's time to start rubbing out what's here. Okay, so I'm going to see what happens when I pull this up. So because I only had a little bit extra, this shouldn't be too bad of a problem. If there's a lot extra, understand it's going to be adding extra stuff to the edge of the cylinder, which you might not want. Okay. It's going to be very hard to deal with the inside because it's so deep in there, so that's why it was important that I had a lot of slip in the beginning. So if I could see in there really well, I do see where the slip oozed out, and that means it does have good contact. Now, another thing I just happened to notice when I looked inside is that edge that I made look great on the outside is showing itself a little bit on the inside, especially up here I noticed, and so I'm going to rub that in right now. Be careful you don't deform everything and stretch it out. Good general rule is keep your hand behind it, basically make a wall that you are going to keep your clay from stretching. And if you can't get down any farther, then you've done your best. Otherwise you could try to reach something in there, something that would allow you to rub that out. But my only bad spot happened to be near the top, so I'm good to go. So now, again, this messes up my design. Come on, man. Now, I could do this on purpose. I could say, you know what? I want to maybe make an area at the bottom that doesn't have a texture. And maybe that's what I want to go for. And I'm all about, ideas can change as you go, especially when you're working with 3D like this. You might have a plan that you like the look of it when you're working with it as a flat drawing. But once you get into the 3D nature of it, it looks different. And so I had a plan in the beginning, but now I'm open for change. So I might say, yeah, you know, the more I look at it, I don't like this cratery look all the way down. Maybe I, on purpose, want to have it. Okay, so I have my cylinder made with a texture put into it. And now I want to do the other part of my idea, which was going to be these circles that are going to be all around. And so lots of ways that could be done. I'm going to choose the additive method, where I'm going to make some thin slabs, cut them into the shapes that I want, and stick those onto the clay. Okay, now that I have this all worked out, I can try placing things on there dry before I add slip on there to make sure that I'm happy with it. So I'm just going to lightly stick them on there because, believe it or not, sometimes your idea doesn't look as good in real life as you thought it would. So, alright, kind of what I thought it would look like. It sticks out a little bit more than I was really interested in though, so I'm rethinking this. So before I scrap the idea completely, I'm going to go ahead and try to do a thinner version of it. Okay, so I have a couple of them flattened out a little bit more. Okay, so I have something now that I'm good with. And now I'm ready to put a handle on here. And so to make a handle, there's many ways to do it. But the important thing we need to realize is however you put your handle on here and wherever you put it, you want to think all the weight of the mug itself and the contents are all going to be held on in two spots. So when you do your handle, you want to do something that's going to be strong where it connects. This doesn't mean you have to have a huge thick handle, but it does require you to make sure that you score and slip really well and to make sure you realize how much contact there is with your clay. Now, I prefer to use what I call a question mark kind of handle because it's like this. And so what I'm looking at is right here, I have extra clay grabbing on. It's not just like the letter C where just the little points are touching, giving you just small points of contact, but I'm making sure that it actually bends down like that. And then on the bottom, I'm actually doing that as well. So I have that going on. Maybe you can see it more in these ones. The idea is that gives me lots of strength. So however you end up making it look, if you think to yourself, how much clay is touching clay will give it extra strength. And so it doesn't have to be like that. If you look at this one, notice what's happening with this though. It's definitely getting thicker right there when it touches, so more clay is grabbing there too. So there's no one way it has to be, but do make sure that you have strength that's going to be able to hold. So you can make your handles a few different ways. One way you could do it is by rolling out a slab. So if I want to make sure I have, almost like I'm making a coil here, but I'm going to roll this out flatter, like a slab would be. But to make sure I get the length, I started like a coil. And if I want to have a certain thickness, again, I can use my rolling guides. If I don't want to have even thickness, then don't use rolling guides. But this will give me a nice long piece that is a certain thickness all throughout. That's what I'm shooting for. And then I can go ahead and trim it so that I can make it the width that I want it to be. So I'm going to use a cutting tool here and cut essentially a long rectangle out. Okay, and now I want to make sure that it's very even. So when I look at mine, I'm deciding how thick I want that. I think I want it not super thick on this, or super wide. And I'm eyeballing this so it looks like it's really parallel. And then I'm going to cut it out. Now I'm cutting way more than I need here. But now I have a piece that I could see how it looks. Now, I'm not going to go any farther with it until I can see how it looks with it. And so I can do a quick little scan to see, am I happy with the size? I'm happy with the thickness. I do not like how squared the edges are. I want it to be a lot smoother. For one, the look, and then also the feel. I don't want it to be sharp there. And so I'm just going to smooth that out. A little bit of water in your finger or a little bit of water in your sponge. Be a nice way to smooth that out. Now, you certainly can do things to your handle that are connected to your design. Like I could add this kind of a texture there. I could add things that connect to this or not. It's your call. But it is an opportunity where you can make your piece a little bit more unified. Now I want to think to myself, the handle, when I grab it, you're grabbing all sides, so I'm going to round out or smooth out the corners on both sides. So I should have 4 corners that are more rounded. Now because I made it too long, I have the opportunity to work with this in a way where I can take the worst part and not use it. So if there's one end that's looking worse than the other, then I'll just not use that end. So it all actually looks pretty decent in this case. I'm just going to cut off the bad end. Got it. And now I want to see what this looks like if I was going to do this kind of a wrapped around thing. So I'm kind of envisioning it by laying it out so I can see it, but I can also go ahead and do this. Now I start with the top and work my way down and see if I like what I see. Now, mugs come in all sorts of different handles where you can put your whole hand in, you can get 2 fingers in, 1 finger in. It's really, again, personal preference on the look and the feel of it, but do think about it. So I might actually want to go and say, I do actually want to make it so I can put my hand in, so I want to make it big enough to handle that. So whatever it may be, you do that. So now that I'm putting it on, it does really stand out to me as being odd that the texture is so different than this, and I don't like that. So I am going to go ahead and try to put in some of this texture that I used for the rest of it. Again, that's a preference, but once I saw it on there, I realized that that is what I wanted. Now this whole thing could be done with coils instead of a flat slab like this. So I could have just rolled out my clay to be already a coil like you did coil building, and so I could roll out my coils and let that be a little bit more rounded rather than so flat. Very, very common. A lot of mugs have more of a rounded handle. So if you are doing it, just go through the same process that we went through about coil building. Drill yourself out the handle that you want and making what you want that way. Do be aware the more times that you try it out, it's going to crack more and more and more until it gets really, really cracked. And so don't overdo it as you're testing it out. So I'm going to scope out where I think I want to have this handle with my design being considered at the same time. So maybe I want it right here and here. And so the top one, I'm going to get in some nice grooves here to the clay. So I'm going to score it quite well. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the part that's going to be touching. Alright, so I'll be ready to stick that on. Now I do it upside down, like I'll go like this and I'll lay it down. It's going to seem a little bit weird at first, but if I can stick this on there really good, then I'll be able to wrap this down and around. And so now I'm just kind of checking it all out before all of a sudden I have it up in the air and I don't know what to do. I know where to score it here, and I can figure out where I want to score it here. And now I can test this one more time so I can get an idea of roughly how big I think I want to do this. Now it seems like your clay is cracking a lot, get some water added to it because I don't want it breaking in the middle of testing this out. But I do want to see how much I can go with here. So it looks like I'm going to go to about there. And so right now, before I go any farther, I'm going to make a little dot on here so I can remember where that is. So right there is my dot, and this is where I'm going to put my scoring on this one because I didn't know exactly where until I could put it on there. So I think I'm good like this, and should all be ready to go to get placed on. All right, so slip time. Do a great job. I'm going to put this top one on. Make good contact. Don't squeeze it so hard that you deform the shape of everything, but do make good contact. And then figure out how you want it to curve a little bit. You'll be able to adjust a little bit once this is on here. I'm going to push the bottom on. If it seems like it's caving on me, I could be able to push it out from the inside. If it's too tall and too narrow, I can't get my hand in there, I can put my roller in here as a wall and push against it. Because I do want to make sure that's really good contact. And then wipe away any extra slip that's oozing out there. I do want to have enough that it does that, but I want to wipe it away. If you can't get at it with your fingers, then use a tool. So I'm going to use my little wooden stick here. Clean it up a little bit. I don't want to dig deep in there and take too much away, but I do want to make sure that it's on there. Now, a few things as you're approaching finishing. One, if your handle is pretty soft and applying a little gravity to it causes it to sag a little bit, you can prop it up a bit, even doing something as simple as this, pushing it against something lightly so that it just doesn't have a chance to fall. That does work, so you might do that for a little while. And then let things firm up, let it get to leather hard. At that point, we want to make sure that we give everything a good look over. You want to check out the rim. You want to make sure that that's very smooth, so you may be going over that again. You may be labeling it. Of course, you want to get that on there nice. And then just check everything out about that it looks like you didn't miss something. And then, to give you an even stronger handle and a stronger slab built piece, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bag it up like this for a day. So it's going to seem kind of strange. I'm done with it, but I want to bag it. And what's going to happen is all that slip will slowly dry and kind of form as one piece. It'll make it stronger. If you quickly take slab pieces and just let them dry fast, you're going to get a lot of pulling apart and falling apart. So in this case, I like to do it where I'll Usually just kind of like lightly put a bag over it. If it dries a little bit, that's okay. But just let that get firmer and then give it a day after that where it starts to dry out slowly. But definitely do not accelerate anything like a hairdryer or anything like that, or you're going to find yourself getting a situation where things start coming apart before you want them to. So eventually it'll be to the point that it's all done. All looks great. It's all buffed up nice. And then we're going to be setting it aside, bring it into fire. And someday we'll get into glazing it, and it'll be a usable piece of art where you can go and enjoy your favorite beverage. Oh, what was that? Here's my coffee. The wrong one. So, enjoy.